Good evening. To start off, I want to start off with a sikh of the Rebbe. Yesterday was Gimel Shvat. Gimel Shvat, Tavshinun Beis, that's 1992, 6 weeks before the Rebbe had his stroke. The Rebbe connected the Frierdiker Rebbe to Moshe Rabbeinu. We know that when Hashem appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu by the sneh, by the burning bush, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, I cannot speak, kvad peh, kvad loshen. And Abishur said, I'll be with you. And Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, Shlach no b'tayat tishlach. So by the end, Hashem said to Moshe, okay, you will speak, but Aaron will be your translator. He'll be Neviecha, that you'll like speak once to Pari, and Aaron will explain it. And in Parshas Va'era, Moshe Rabbeinu says that Ani Aralsef V'Saim, I cannot speak at all. The Rebbe connected to Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, we know, in the last years, the Frierdiker Rebbe suffered he had strokes and so forth. He wasn't a well person physically, and it was very hard for him to speak. So a lot of the Mamorim in those years, in the last few years of the Frierdiker Rebbe took Mamorim, what he spoke already once before. Let's say like Basar Legani, what the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out to learn that Shabbos for the yortzeit of his grandmother, Rebbe Rivka, was really a mimer what he said in 1923, Tafesh Pei Gimel. And over there he changed it and he edited it, and he was given out to learn for that Yud Shvat, and that's why Basar Legani is the main theme for Yud Shvat. So the Rebbe then said that one of the doctors, a professor, asked him, how could it be that the Eibishter hampered your speech? Since you're a Rebbe, and the way how you can communicate to your Chassidim, to say Chassidus and so forth, is by speech. So how could the Eibishter take away from you that power that was very hard for the Frierdiker Rebbe to speak? And the Rebbe then said that he didn't want to pain the Frierdiker Rebbe, but he wanted the Frierdiker Rebbe to demand from the Eibishter that he should get back his speech. But Lepoil, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was very hard for him to speak. And he gave out Mamorim to learn. So at the end is Arna Achicha Yeneviecha, that the Chassidim had to go and explain and learn and teach the Frierdiker Rebbe's teachings, because the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't Farbrengan. So in the Frierdiker Rebbe says a Maimer and Farbrengan, there would be repetition, then they'll write out the Hanacha, and then it would be edited, or it wouldn't be edited, but there would be much more Chassidus. And this hampered. So, but Lepoil, Arna Achicha Yeneviecha, that the Chassidim had to take them Amorim and teach them and learn them. 6 weeks later, the Rebbe got a stroke. Looking back, the Rebbe was telling us that he won't be able to speak, and we are going to have to be Neviecha to spread the Rebbe's word. Especially after Gimel Tammuz, we have the obligation to teach Chassidus, to spread the Rebbe's word, and especially to prepare the world, and then the old Yidden to be Mekabel Pnei Mashiach. That was the last thing what the Rebbe was demanding constantly, but really it wasn't the last. It was the first Maimer. The Rebbe said that we're the 7th generation without the Rebbe started to be Gila Lekus Lamata. And we're like the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu to make the Beis HaMikdash down here. And this is our job, especially for Mechanchos or Mechanchos, who you educate a generation. We have to inspire them that we are the generation to bring Mashiach. Now, let's take Yud Shvat. One of the things of Yud Shvat is you write a pidyon to the Rebbe. Now, to write a pidyon to the Rebbe is, you can tell the kids, we write a letter to the Rebbe, or we can get the children excited. Now, the older children, the older students, you should show them a shtickle video of like of Erev Rosh Hashanah when the Rebbe accepted the Pidyonis, or it was Erev Rosh Hashanah only. The Rebbe going to the oil, the Rebbe standing by the oil. You can explain that the Rebbe used to stand by the oil for hours, daven, and as the Rebbe stood physically there, standing by the oil, davening, the Rebbe is still doing it now when we come to the oil, and the oil is like a Yechidus going in privately into the Rebbe. But especially the older Talmidas, before they write a Pidyon, you should teach them something of Sicha or something of Yud Shvat to get them excited. You should start thinking and explain to them that when we wrote a Pidyon, we said some Tillim, you gave extra tzedakah, you prepared yourself. You just didn't walk in and give the Rebbe a Pidyon. It was with a feeling. A story told about that. It depends how we prepare ourselves. That's how the Rebbe responds to us. There was someone who wasn't a Lubavitcher who decided he's going to go and speak to all the Gedolei Yisrael. So he came to the Rebbe. So he went into the Beis Medrash and asked the Bacham, how do you go into the Rebbe for Yechidus? So they told him, some people fast that day, you go to the mikveh, you say Tillim, you give extra tzedakah, and it's a preparation. And then you write everything down, what you have to. You don't speak to the Rebbe only if the Rebbe asks you questions. And the Rebbe reads your note, your zettel, your letter, and then the Rebbe gives you a bracha, and then you say Amen, and then you walk backwards. And he did it a few times, and then we had this chus when it was a birthday. We could have gone every birthday in for a bracha. And that's what he did for a few years. One year he decided, I'm not a Lubavitcher. I'm going to come to the Rebbe like a Stam Yid who wants to come and see a Gadol Hador. So he didn't prepare himself. He opened up the door. The Rebbe looked up, the Rebbe smiled and said, good evening, was machman. He saw right away the difference. When he went in to prepare the Rebbe looked at you, the Rebbe didn't smile, the Rebbe didn't say good evening to you. It was a chassid and a Rebbe relationship. Once he walked in, not like a chassid, so then the relationship was a Rebbe Tayyid from Klal Yisrael. Same thing when we go in either into the Rebbe's room or we go into the oil, it's like a Yechidus. And when we prepare ourselves properly, so then we really connect internally. And this is what, especially for the older children, have to, the Talmidos, to explain that Yud Shvat is not stam a day. You light a candle and you give extra tzedakah. Yud Shvat is also for us. It's the day of the beginning of the Nesius of the Rebbe. Yes, Yud Shvat is the stalkus of the previous Rebbe, but to our generation, Yud Shvat is 70 years from when the Rebbe became officially Rebbe. And this is something, if they see it by the Mechanchos or the Mechanchim, that can inspire the Talmidos. Just to mention, even for the younger grades, when we speak about, they'll scribble. I have a brother-in-law, one time went into Yechidus Klolis. Now, generally, there was a Yechidus Pratis that everyone went into the Rebbe's room alone. But in later years, it was overwhelming. So therefore, they made Yechidus Klolis. That means all the Bar Mitzvah boys went in with their parents and downstairs into the Beis Medrash, and the Rebbe spoke, and then all the Chosen Kalas with their parents. And then the guests also, like this, the guests used to go in, everyone used to go in privately. In the early years, they would go in twice. Once they came for Tishrei and once before they left. And then later they used to go in once before they left. And then later it was too much. It was 1 year when the Rebbe Mamish sat by Yechidus Pratis. The Rebbe started from 8 in the morning, from 8 in the evening to 8 in the morning. And then Rebbe came back a few hours later, and then 3 o'clock started again Yechidus. It was overwhelming, so then they started making Yechidus Klolos. So my brother-in-law went with his family, and he had a child. What is he going to do? The Rebbe is going to speak Sasicha. So he gave the child a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, whatever, and he scribbled. They go past the Rebbe, and the Rebbe takes the notes. The Zettlach, the Rebbe gave a dollar, gave a bracha. When the child goes with his scribbling paper, the Rebbe stretches out the hand that the child should give what the child wrote. Now to us, this is scribbled. The Rebbe didn't look like that as scribbled. The child scribbled, it is something, it's an expression. Rabbi Yamin Klein told me personally that when a child sent a picture and a drawing to the Rebbe would analyze what did the child express in this picture, what he sent or she sent. So when we look at children, they scribble a hin and a hair, the Rebbe looks at it that the child expressed themselves. He cannot read it, but the Rebbe could read it. So even for the younger grades, how much you can express to them and explain to them, but that's also what they scribbled, that's the pidyon. Now, the excitement in the classroom depends on the excitement of the Mechanchos. If we are excited that it's coming good Shvat, and if we can express, those who were there is one thing, those who weren't there, you read about it and you can express the feeling what Chassidim had. Now, I wasn't there when the Rebbe took the Nesius, even though I have a white beard, but I was born after the Rebbe became Rebbe. But you read about what happened that year till the Rebbe became Rebbe, and the simcha what the Chassidim had when the Rebbe became Rebbe, and Nemtzev got up and was made a Shechiyonu, and that Rebbe started a Maimer and so forth, and that people felt, and it's in gem videos, they have different what they felt when the Rebbe became Rebbe, and that the connection. And if we can inspire ourselves and inspire the children, then they will feel that the Rebbe is there and the Rebbe is our Rebbe. Now, it's, as I said many times before, there's a difference when I speak a story of the Frierdiker Rebbe, or if I speak a story of the Rebbe. I was there for quite a few years. I wasn't there for all the years, but there was this personal connection. Those who weren't there have the job to inspire themselves, that they should be able to inspire others. Now, I have children who were very young, and what did they remember exactly what was by the Rebbe? Lav Dafka. But nevertheless, when they are inspired, and they're inspired because in the house, I have to thank my Balbusta, that inspired that the Rebbe is with us. So even though that they're older, they're in their 30s and so forth, but they didn't see the Rebbe for so many years, but they are inspired and they are inspiring their children. I'll tell you a story. I hope my Balbusta doesn't get angry at me. Baruch Hashem, my son, one of my children had right after Test Kislev was a Thursday, his wife gave birth to our daughter. Comes home Shabbos, and he tells the kids in the morning, it was at night, that they have a baby sister. So the two older girls, well, one is 7 or one is 6, run into
Raichik.
and they come out and they say, the name is going to be Shana. So he says to them, how do you know? Because Tes Yud Kislev is connected to the Mittler Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe Rebbetzin was Shana. They were right. Now it says that small children have nevuah. Okay, so they had nevuah. But the Chassidus in the home, that they know that Tes Kislev is a special day. It's a Mittler Rebbe, and a daughter was born, a sister was born, and what's going to be the name? So surely it's going to be after the Rebbetzin of that period of time. That is meaning that in the family, Chassidus slept. Same thing in this classroom, there has to be that the Rebbe is with us. And a lot of it has to do with mices, to tell stories of the Rebbe. Now, tell stories how the Rebbe was connected with every individual, tell stories how the Rebbe was connected to children was important. The Rebbe gave l'chaim, the kashal bracha, the Rebbe stood for hours giving dollars, the Rebbe was standing for hours. Then you tell stories of Meisim, especially now when we have Zoom, and many classes are in Zoom, and there's a disconnect between the teacher and the students. It's very important, especially for the older grades, to tell mices and have discussions. It's not only to learn. You have a learning book and you know that you have to learn, cover so much and so much ground. Today, it's not only how much we're going to learn. Another pasuk chumash or another pasuk navi, it's important. But it's the hashpah of the feeling of Yiddishkeit and Chassidishkeit. We really don't know what's happening in the child's home. I got a call from a non-Lubavitcher school about a Lubavitcher girl going there, and she's in 12th grade, and it's about seminary, and it doesn't, she didn't apply and so forth, and the principal calls me and said that the daughter said that don't think that my parents are such a chassidim, even though they look so, the house is entirely different. I was a bit shocked. I called the father. I mean, I'm working with the father that the kid should go to a Lubavitcher seminary. But the Nakuda is, when we see a child, we can only see externally. We don't know internally what's happening with the child. We don't know internally what's happening in the house. So everyone goes with a kapata and everyone goes like this. What's happening in the house? We have no idea. Especially now in Zoom. And we have no idea. You know, the kid can come on Zoom and we don't know if the kid pushes on Zoom and then goes somewhere else and the name just says is there. You have to get them involved. You have to ask questions and so forth to make sure that the kids are there. But discussions are very, very important. My brother-in-law teaches in the Oyel Chana, or he taught Tanya, and he says more than when he taught Tanya, it ended up in discussions. Girls have questions, and how do you do it, and this, and they don't express it in their family. They don't express it to their parents. And children have a lot of questions, and girls have a lot of questions. Why is this permitted? Why is not that permitted? Why do we Chabad do this, and why do we do that? And we cannot tell them yes, no, no, yes. You have to give them the warmth and the background and the feeling for it, especially now that we are fighting against technology. You know, that every kid has to have a smartphone. Who knows after school or where the kid ends up with a smartphone. I'm talking the assigned yeshivas, wherever they are, and where the adults end up with their in middle of 12 o'clock at night and so forth. So therefore, the Mechanchos and the Mechanchim are the boulders of Yiddishkeit and Chassidishkeit. And that can only be given over when we have that feeling and we have to discuss it. Same thing, parents have to discuss also with their children, many things. But many parents don't. And today, you know, those lockdowns in certain places and so forth, and everything is Zoom, Ahin and Zoom Aher, and there has to be the inner connection even more than when they were in the classrooms. And this is what we have to give and what we could give. And we don't know. I mean, my daughter, she's in Toronto, told us that she had a girl in a class, and then she had like stories she tells them, and then there's the conversations. And then the girl started to cry openly and told her that she has a sister that my daughter didn't know. Sister who's not from, and her sister in the house is not from, puts on the computer on Shabbos, doesn't eat kosher. And summertime, she slipped also. and she started to be with her. And since my daughter spoke with them, told stories and the conversations, so it gave her the koiches. She cried that that she did something wrong, and gave her the strength not to fall through the trap. So with the Pasuk Chumash only explaining that wouldn't happen, through the conversations that inspired her to get the strength not to fall through. And we don't know what's happening in the houses. I don't know what's happening in people's houses. Mechanchos don't know, Mechanchim don't know, especially now with Corona, you cannot go to the houses, so you don't even know how the house looks and where the kid does his homework or she does her homework. So the Warmkeit of Chassidus connection is by us telling a story. And it doesn't only has to be stories of how long do I have?
You could finish your thought. No, you're good. You're right on time.
I'm good. I'm still good. Okay. It doesn't only have to be stories of the Rebbe. Stories of Chassidim are very important. Rebbe told Rabbi Pliskin that when he...
I'm sorry, if anyone is on the mic, please mute yourself.
That when he Farbrengs with Bachim, he should tell stories of Chassidim. Because if he tells stories of Rabbeim, how holy they were, so
the
then
apples
they...
what?
Have to be kept in the fridge.
Please mute yourself.
Bitter.
Mute yourself. I'm going to mute all, and Rabbi Raichik, please unmute yourself. Okay, Rabbi Raichik, you can now click the mic.
Okay, I'm okay?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yes, we hear you.
Okay, so the Rebbe told Rabbi Pliskin, now when you tell stories of Rabbeim and the greatness of the Rabbeim, the Bachrim, the Rebbe, I'm not a Rebbe. When you speak a story of a chassid who didn't live in the time of the Alter Rebbe, if we speak about chassidim who lived in the last few decades, so then the Bachik could maybe relate to it because this is a chassid and he's not a Rebbe and was a chassid of the Rebbe, and I want to be a chassid of the Rebbe. So I'm not. You're not talking only stories of Rebbetzin. You're talking about story of a shlucha or so forth. So then it gives the inner connection that the Talmidah or the Talmud could relate to it. And this is something that we have to remember. So yes, we have to tell stories of the Rabbeim, stories of the Rebbe, but we also have to tell stories of Chassidim with their Mesiras Nefesh, what they had, and also tell stories not only about Russia, so people say we're not living in Russia, about people who lived in America and the hardships that they went, or shluchim, who from the Frierdiker, from the Rebbe, who went out to places where there was no Yiddishkeit and so forth, and had to start from ground zero, and what they had to build, and they were strong because they were connected to the Rebbe. When we get that feeling into them, so then they feel that they can be part of the Rebbe's army. All right, everyone, Hatzlacha Rabbah, and we should be zeicha that is Yud Shvat yet, even before Yud Shvat, to be with the Rebbe in the third Beis HaMikdash, and to Hiskashrus of Mashiach now. Kol Tuf.